My name is America Lozano. This is my sign name. I'm 23 years old, and I was born in Mexico. And my major is photography. At first, they thought I was born hearing and that I lost my hearing at the age of 1, but I don't think that's true. I think I was born deaf. Okay, so I grew up in Mexico, and during that time, there was no communication. I couldn't communicate what I was feeling, my thoughts. I just only knew basic things such as like I'm going to bed or food, simple concepts. Once I moved here to the United States, it was different. My dad started to notice that I was different. Something was different within me because I didn't depend on them so much to help me do homework or whatever I needed. I was more independent. I could be on my own. And then my dad started to sit down and like write to me and try to communicate with me in English. And I was shocked. I'm like, wait, my dad knows English? How does he know English? One thing he asked me was like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said a doctor, you know? But I was like wondering I never knew he knew English. And then that's when he started asking me like, hey, what's the sign for this? What's the sign for that? And that's how I started to teach him. Like, for example, like book, this is the sign for book. And he's like, oh, okay. He started to grasp it. The challenge was with my mom. My mom had made up her mind that she expected me to speak Spanish most of the time, period. She required me to speak Spanish. I would try to sign with her, but she didn't want to. She didn't want to use sign language. So the relationship and the communication there was not as strong as much as it was with my dad. That wasn't until high school that she realized the importance of ASL, especially for me, and that it was easier to communicate, to express my feelings, my thoughts. And that she was willing and started to learn, and our relationship has gotten a lot better than it was before. And with my brothers and sisters, I mean, we don't have issues there. They sign most of the time. With my brother, he'll tend to fingerspell a lot. But with my sister, I mean, from the beginning, since she was a baby, I've been teaching her sign language, and so she's grown up with it, and she's being able to pick it up quickly. Yeah, that's all. But I mean, there was no communication, there was no interpreter, there was no deaf ed teacher, no one who knew sign there. I was alone. I felt isolated. I would sit in the classroom and miss all of the information. I would just sit there and stare blankly. You know, they would give me homework and I didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, okay, I will just go home and give it to my parents and show my mom. And my mom kind of became like my teacher. She would try to gesture and teach me the material, but that was really tough. I didn't learn at all from my education in Mexico. I felt like, I don't want to say dumb, but in a way, there was no access for me. There was no way for me to learn. They had a department with a deaf program, but I was hesitant. I didn't want to go there. So I went to the hearing school, and they had the same issues that I had in Mexico there. No access, things weren't being clear. I had therapy, but I wasn't getting access. So what they did is they took me out of that and they put me within a deaf program. And once they put me in that deaf program, everything changed. That changed my life. Because was like, wait, the teacher knows sign language? Wait, there's an interpreter? There's more deaf people? Everyone's signing? I've never seen that before. I had never seen that before. I was like, wow. I felt overwhelmed, goodness. But I'm thankful for that teacher that put me in the deaf program. And she taught me my ABCs, my numbers. She taught me how to sign. And I picked it up from them. And also from the deaf students. I picked it up from them. Quickly, I felt at home. I felt like this is home for me. They are my family. This deaf group, this deaf community, they're there. And I didn't need to worry. Or like, I go to my parents, how do I do homework? I didn't need to do that anymore. I didn't need to depend on my parents anymore. I could be independent and on my own. That was at the age of 8. I was very young. Something that sucks is that in college I don't have the same support system. It's just me. I came into college and it was a lot different than high school, to be honest. In high school, like for example, in high school I knew that I had my deaf friends there and everything's gonna be okay. I had my interpreter, like I knew who they were. I knew my deaf ed teacher. We were all good. Everyone's there. We had that community. And I felt like I had that support system, and it was already there if I needed them. However, coming into college, it's just me. Who can I depend on? Who's gonna be my support system here? It was just me. I can only depend on myself here. How do I word it? I had to take on this responsibility for myself. I have to ask for access, ask for the interpreter. If my hearing friends didn't understand what I was saying or I didn't understand them, there was that challenge of communicating with them. It's a lot more different than high school. That's a good question. Well, I wish SARS provided more in-person interpreters, not through Zoom. Yeah, the interpreter's there to interpret, but they don't know the context of the environment of what's going. They can't see me or the professor or what's going on in the class. They don't know what's going on. So they're just there with whatever words that they get. So that's a barrier within itself. Yeah, I mean, it's access. It's equality. They're providing the service. That's amazing. And it's nice that I have it there, but I wish it was more in person. So they can look and see what's going on and what's happening around me. And they can let me know and explain things that are happening, and that's equity. And I need to know what's going on. You know, SARS needs more interpreters, period. There's not enough interpreters. And I know that it's not easy to get these interpreters, because we have several deaf students that are in college here at TCC campus, and I know we have 6 different campuses, obviously, so there's a lot. I wish we had provided more in-person interpreters. Okay. Challenges for me are like asking the teacher questions if the interpreter's not there, or try to explain, like, for example, when I write out or I text something, I can write it out, but it's hard for the grammar, especially for me, because I use sign language, so I have to change it into English syntax. For example, ASL is very visual. It's a very visual language, and I can explain things thoroughly, and I can understand what they're saying if it's in sign language. But when you have to change it into English grammar and try to explain things, it's hard for me to visualize it, and put the words together in a sentence, and I find it challenging. How do I express this to the professor? That's tough. That's a challenge for me. That's a really good question. I'm attending college to show that I can. I'm a deaf Latina that can. I want to prove it. And I'm the first generation in my family that's going to college, and I'm deaf and Latina. So there's that. I want to show my family that the importance of education. Especially in the Mexican community, there's a lot of people that don't see the benefits of college or of getting an education. And if you go to college, it's amazing because you have the possibility of picking your major, your minor. You can follow your goals and dreams and get that degree and say you did it. And say, I did this. I earned this. It's important. Well, growing up, I remember one time I was running around the house, back and forth, being all jumpy. And my mom was in the kitchen cooking. She was getting frustrated because I was annoying her while I was playing and running around. And mom was thinking, like, how do I get her to calm down? How do I get her to sit and quiet down? How do I do this? Oh, she pulled out a photo album and gave it to me. And I was looking at these pictures and I was engrossed. I was like looking at them for hours upon hours, just mesmerized by these images. I just really like photography from that point. Also, all through my life since moving here to the United States, around like middle school time, I started taking pictures with my phone, of course. And I had this app that would change, edit it. I could edit the picture, and I found it very interesting and fun. I started doing some type of typography, like adding words to images and making them pretty and having fun with it, being creative in general. And then I was like, why not go to college for photography? And that's how I got here today. My brother is very artistic and he expresses himself through art. So I was like, how do I express myself? What is the way that I can express myself? I love writing too, but I wanted something. And I think photography was my avenue to show that. To show how I express myself. That was my art. Just like my brother has his, I have mine. Then there's people who journal and write, and that's their form of art. I express myself through photography. That's my art. I like taking pictures. This beautiful world that we have. I think it's beautiful and I want to capture it. That's a good question. Something I wish hearing people knew, especially like children, like that are in elementary school, take advantage of taking ASL classes. Get exposed to that language and the deaf culture. For example, like idioms or phrases that deaf people use. And slang that they use, everything that's involved in deaf culture. Pick up on that and remember it. Keep, retain that. So when you're out and about doing something and you notice that there's like a deaf person there, you're like for children that are playing in the playground or, doing whatever out and about, you never know when you can meet a deaf person. and maybe become friends with them. It's just like everyday life. So deaf people can feel more comfortable. You don't have to be stressing about, hey, let me type it on my phone and show it to you, or try to gesture with you to try to make communication easier. I know I get that the world's not perfect, but the effort should be there. For hearing adults, like if you're yelling to try to get our attention or saying excuse me or something, and we ignore you, you may think that we're being rude. However, that's not the case. We just can't hear you. And, if you notice that we're not paying attention, come up to us. Don't be afraid. Don't just leave because you think we're being rude. And we'll look at you and be like, hey, what's going on? And you say, excuse me, can we write back and forth? And sometimes many people just rather do nothing than write back and forth. And that kind of hurts. Makes you feel like, really? You don't even want to try to talk to me? Don't just leave. Make an effort. It's easy for you to text. You don't have to worry. Don't be afraid. Just show, text it in the phone and show us, and we'll be able to understand. We'll be able to communicate. You can gesture or text or whatever. And if you know some sign, that would be amazing. A few basic ASL signs. That's just my advice, to try to communicate with the deaf people. You don't have to be afraid. We're willing to engage and we're ready to chat with you. It's fine. Come talk to us.